A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. In a lot of ways, it feels like a step down from the original movie. I'm not saying it's a bad film per se, but when it comes down to it, this one could have been so much better. So the story of this one, it takes place 5 years after the events of the original movie. The Washes, they have moved into Nancy Thomas' former's house, and their son Jesse, he's having nightmares about Freddy Krueger. And so when there are weird things going on, then Jesse tries to find out the bottom of it. And from there, the movie stumbles a bit throughout its 87-minute runtime. You know, I don't generally hate this movie. There were some cool things to see in this movie, such as Freddy Krueger popping up out of the ground to scare the partygoers. And Jesse Watts is actually struggling as Freddy Krueger is actually possessing him and getting him to do these awful things. And there are some interesting moments throughout this movie, but when it comes down to it, there are the homoerotic themes, which I thought was an odd choice considering what the first film was, and how Freddy Krueger, apparently his powers can be reality-based. And I was like, what? That conflicts what happens in the first film. It's just odd to me because the rules were clearly established in the first movie, but they backtrack on this. It does lead to some confusing moments that happens throughout this one. Nonetheless though, as odd as this film really is, it's not terrible like some of the later films would end up becoming in this franchise. The story in this movie is not bad, but it is pretty forgettable and lackluster. Like, at least the acting is decent. Mark Patton did a decent enough job playing Jesse Wash. Now, he's a character that's going through these horrible things. But, you know, what does he really want? Like, unlike the first movie, we don't really get much information out of Jesse. We see him going through all this. But it's like he's one of these characters that pops up in this movie, then never pops up again in any of the future films of the franchise. But at least, you know, Kim Myers playing Lisa Weber, also a decent enough job. You know, she's the love interest. But one of the issues I really have with this movie is how they really turned this film upside down. Like, they changed the rules. In the first movie, Freddy Krueger can only hurt his victims in his dreams, but in this, he's doing it in reality. And I was always confused. The people, are they actually seeing Freddy Krueger, or are they seeing Jesse Wash? I always left that to interpretation. I guess it could be either way. I just thought it was an odd entry this early in the franchise. And speaking of Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund does another terrific job playing the character. He owned this role, simply just for being menacing. Long before Freddy Krueger became a parody of himself, he was a character not to be messed with in these earlier movies. And another thing I want to point out, why they didn't bring back Nancy Thompson. I know she does return for part 3, but the mere fact she's not in this movie at all, it's like it's confusing. I mean, the late Wes Craven said this was his least favorite film in the franchise, and I can see why, because they do so many things to mess up the lore of Freddy Krueger, and it feels like it's all over the place. Not a horrible film, but I must admit they could have did a little bit better job. You know, the issue was they rushed this into production because this one, it also had saved New Line Cinema for going bankrupt, so that's something. When it comes down to it though, this movie, it has issues, yes, but it's a film that a lot of people are mixed on. Some like it and others can't stand it. And for me personally, I just felt like this film could ended up being so much better. I'm giving this film a 6 out of 10. To be honest, this one's alright. It's not part 1 or part 3. But at least this was before this franchise went into mediocrity. One theory I did hear about this movie that this is a nightmare of Nancy Thompson. And I'm like, how? If that was the case, then the actress Heather Langenkamp would have made an appearance in this one. And just like the first film, this one too does end in a dream sequence. And I was really asking myself, man, they really should have took their time to craft a better story for this one. And besides, a lot of people have said this film is underrated. And that's my review of A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Okay, leave your comments down below in the section and let me know what you think about this movie. Alright, this is Slum Guy 172 saying, Peace out.